I know I say this a lot, but I have to say it again. I am so excited to have my guest with me, Mr. Justin Konikow, today, because it really is a no-brainer of an episode for us to do this together. And for our viewers, you see a lot of people in the room today because the two teams, my team here in Toronto and Justin's team from London, Prime Real Estate, were together in the same room. So excited to have you today, my man, Justin. How you doing?
We're family, brother. This is exciting.
This is obviously a long time coming because we've spoken about doing podcasts and doing a lot of content. And now to see the progression in my business as well as yours, and not finally to get together, it feels really good, my man.
It's organic. That's the word we're talking about.
Right.
When we're talking about, doing this episode.
Right.
You're one of the most authentic guys I've ever met. From
Means a lot.
The day you called me and we met, and the friendship we've forged over the years. We've always collaborated. We've gone back and forth on ideas. I've called you on things as you're in the GTA market, and it's been nuts and things got crazy in London. I called you for advice. How do you deal with things like this? And we had a head start on our market by a couple of years, because you're like, we've been dealing with this for years. This is how you handle this. And then things go one way or the other, and you've called me, and we've always jammed like a brother, right?
How long have you been a realtor for? Just to give our viewers and listeners some context.
So 2012, my wife threw me off a cliff, kicking and screaming. I had every presupposition of the real estate industry that you guys probably have.
Sure.
And my wife, I've learned over the years, is very intelligent. Mm-hmm. And whenever she says...
You're not just saying this because it's recorded and stuff,
no,
right? Okay,
and I'm not just saying this because she's the broker of record at my firm. She's been an absolute blessing.
Shannon, right?
Shannon, yeah.
Shout out to Shannon.
Super smart. She'll never tell you this. MBA from Ivy. Very well educated, powerful woman. Very unassuming. And... we were looking for a business to get into for a long time, mm-hmm. and we looked at the restaurant business because I had a really strong background in there. She had a consulting business in Yorkville here, and there was kind of a natural progression. So we were getting courted by some large franchisees to take over their firms.
Okay.
She kept bringing up real estate, and I had presuppositions of the industry. And
Why?
I said, you know what? I just worked really hard my whole life, right?
Okay.
I used to work 70-hour weeks changing tires and landscaping, and I worked in the restaurant industry, and I just worked.
Yeah.
And like everybody else, I thought real estate agents don't work. It's golf courses and commission checks, right?
Put up a for sale sign, it gets sold. What the heck did you really do is what sometimes we hear, right?
1,000%.
Yeah.
And I didn't want that to be my legacy.
Yeah.
She said she tricked me into getting my license, got my license, started doing the business, absolutely loved it, because it was really, she was right. She said, you'll draw the type of people you want to work with. You won't work with the people that you don't want to work with. And that's really what it became. It became a referral business. We came out of the gates running green like anybody else, saw some holes in the industry where we thought we could fill those gaps.
Right.
And within 2 years, she sent me a business plan that she had written for Prime saying, this is great. This is how the industry is. This is how we're going to run our company. So I, again, kicking and screaming, said, we got a great thing going. We're doing good business. Why don't we just stay where we are? And she said, no, this is what we talked about. Let's do it.
Right.
Pushed me off that cliff, and it snowballed from there, and I'm really happy that we did it.
I'm so glad that you spoke about us, obviously both being realtors, because you don't hear it or see it often where people in the same industry, and there's probably somebody watching or listening who's thinking like we're probably competitors, and where we're so willing to share so much.
Yep.
We get on a call once every 3 weeks or so. First, you call me around 8 o'clock in the morning, knowing I'm driving in, you're driving in. I get so excited for those calls because I know you're going to give me your best goods and everything that's working and that's not working for you. But in a way, and that's probably the competitive nature, I'm actually trying to outdo you in that sense. Like, I want to give you more. Mm-hmm. What is it? Why do you think a lot more people are not seeing and or doing, seeing that mindset?
I think a lot of people have short-term vision, right? Like, they're looking at today. I'm going to go up against that listing. And this happens with agents in my own market where I tell people, I'm like, call me. I'll tell you all my secrets. And I do on a regular basis. You look at...
I know. I'm telling you, you do. All the time.
And even you go to my Instagram page with 477 episodes deep. I'm telling you everything that I do because I know at the end of the day, you're probably not going to do it. When it comes down to it, I know a guy like you will. So, when you make that shift, and a lot of people go through this struggle, and I think that's where my past experience in work was a blessing to me was I put in work for so long, didn't really care about the daily results. I learned the bigger picture from some of my mentors.
Right.
That I took that with me into real estate, and I thought, well, you know, yeah, you may lose something in the short term, or somebody may take something that you've given them as a piece of information and try and use it against you. And you can be worried about that on a day-to-day basis. But you're building legacy. You've been in this business for a long time. You've seen good markets. You've seen bad markets. You've seen people come and go. And we're at that point now in our business where it's the exact same thing. I mean, it came to fruition yesterday where I was on a phone call with somebody and they told me they were dealing with somebody that they thought was one thing, but had put themselves on a platform from a very short-term basis. They were just regurgitating stuff that they had learned somewhere else. They'd never actually done it themselves.
So not really a practitioner.
Not a practitioner.
Yeah.
They found that out really quickly and they shifted and they saw the light. And I think at the end of the day, that's what it comes down to. If you're being authentic to who you are, especially nowadays, it's going to translate in your media. So stuff like this that you're doing, people will learn who you are. And that's where this type of content to me is more enticing than even watching the news. But from a long-term perspective, it's the hardest thing to do, to get out of that box and really just be honest and transparent about everything that you do, because you're so worried somebody's going to take that and use it against you. The best piece of advice I can give you is nobody cares.
So
you can give them everything that you give them. They're worried about the bills they have to pay. They're worried about their boss. They're worried about the listing that, you know, isn't selling that they have to deal with, right? So, you know, I think everybody lives in their own echo chamber, but doesn't realize to reach out to friends like you and collaborate. Even if you're in the same industry, you create more leverage long scale. Look at the deal I just sent Simos. You know what I mean? Like, I got a call for a big deal in Toronto. I could have done it myself. I knew the price was there. The guy's a really good client of mine. And I did an Instagram story about this where I said, you know, it looked like a good deal on paper, but I'm not the expert in King Street West. So the best thing for my client was to kick that out to your team. We still partner on it, and Simos kept me in the loop, and I make sure that I'm serving my client to the highest capacity possible. But that's an example of creating abundance between a team versus me just banging out the deal, and then you saying, oh, why did Justin do that deal in King Street West? And then what could happen in there is if the deal had gone sideways or Simos found something that didn't work from a zoning perspective, I would have been holding the bag. Where now we get a knockout deal done. It's perfect for everybody, and I know my guy's protected, right?
And look, even from the perspective of you like giving us that client, we want to make sure we uphold not only our reputation, but your reputation, because we want to make sure we keep on continuing to do that type of business with each other. But it now in the forefront, again, it's that kind of competitive nature sometimes where which we always have done, like London, Ontario comes up, and I'm like, guys, stop whatever you're asking me about London, because I'm just going to give you the phone number of the guy that's going to answer for it. Justin will take care of that. He'll tell you if it's a good place, or because I don't know a good or bad street in London. But now, both myself and Simeon and the rest of the team, we got our ears perked up. Like, we want to hear London more, because we want to talk about, when we do, we want to pass that on to Justin. And I implore anybody who's listening or watching that if you have an opportunity to collab with people in your industry, like, get to it quickly. Like the guys at Industry Syndicate, our friends down south, when, like, you didn't have to connect them with me, but you were like, no, man, I know a really cool guy in Toronto and you got to hook up with him. I've learned so much from the rest of the guys in the syndicate that not only do I want to pay you back for that, but now I'm forging my own relationships with those guys, right? And so you made mention about mentors. Why have they been important in your life?
I always think, you know, it's easy to try and go after things on your own and, you know, learn everything from the ground up, which more power to you. If you've got that fire inside you and you're willing to do it, go for it. You can do that more now in this world than you ever could before. But mentors is the same thing, right? You take people like you and I that get to a point where you have a legacy business or you've done enough business that you don't need to get up and go after it with the type of energy that we do. You just can't turn it off. But then you get a guy like Vic who's sitting here that calls me. And
what up, Vic?
He was in bike sales before. And he's like, I'm getting into the real estate world. I'm kind of looking to do this. Can I just shadow you? And my instant reaction, I don't even know if I read his resume. I was like, yeah, let's hang.
How did you hear about Justin Vick.
He got introduced to me through like a mutual friend who works in real estate for a company, and he's like, hey, like he knew what I was about, my attitude towards sales, and how I go about things in terms of dealing with people. And he's like, you and Justin really need to link up. He's like, your ideology is very similar, and it has been. I mean, like it's been amazing working together.
I love that because it was really the branding that you've put into place, like where people are starting to come to you now, right?
It hasn't stopped. Like since we've started doing it, it's funny, right? Because I said we're not a sales office, right? We are not a brokerage that just hires agents and lets them kind of just do their own thing. They can run their own business, but we are a team through and through. We know everything about each other's files, and we can jump in and out, and that's kind of been a fun thing about it.
Right? It's like almost like family, right?
I literally sit at night thinking about these guys,
I know you do.
It's a big part about it. How can I serve them? And I know you're the same capacity, which is why we're sitting here. But
I'm so happy that you're here. They know. I'm not just saying that, buddy. It's surreal to me that we're finally doing this. I really feel good about it. Continue, man.
You know, it's fun to watch over the years how things progress and be able to look back and see. We were joking about how before this was outfitted like this, we were sitting here and there were fishing rods in the corner, and it was
it's about a year ago when you came in.
It's so real and raw, but it shows his passion for what he's doing. So I mean, if you haven't watched all of the REC Experience back episodes, put them all on your watch later list, comment, like them all, because this guy's putting out stuff that is such high quality. And I mean, I've taken down nuggets. Like I watched the one with you and Dustin, shout out to the Industry Syndicate again, taking notes from that one too, right? And then it just leads to more growth, but I digress. Going back to people coming to us, I find what it is now, and now that podcasts are very popular, all you guys will understand what I mean by this. When we used to watch interviews on Jay Leno, it was 10 minutes, this is my new movie, haha, and then you don't really know the person, right? No. Podcasts and things like this, you can't hide who you are, which is beautiful. So by the time Vic comes to me, he knows me pretty well. I have no context to him. You know, it's going to be trial and error. Sometimes it works out and sometimes it doesn't, but that's the fun part about it, where I'm getting calls from people now that are struggling, you know, in their own business or seeing what we're doing and being like, hey, like, why did you go down to Toronto? What does that look like? Or like, how do you guys do your content? And I'll meet with them and I'll share exactly what we do. And sometimes it leads to a partnership and sometimes it doesn't. But it's very different to how it's been in the industry for the last 30, 40 years, right?
To your point about that, we can't really hide. And when you're doing such long form content like this, while you were talking about it, it made me think of something that the people that are coming to me now, and I know they're coming to you in that sense, they kind of already know my flaws. Yeah. And that makes me feel good, right? Because if they know my flaws already, they know Jas sometimes stutters. They know sometimes on the other end of the spectrum, Jas thinks too fast and he can't get the words out fast enough out of his mouth, because you're like that too.
Yep.
But if you're still sitting in my office after all that, you're pretty much okay and cool with it, right? It's like what Gary Vee always talks about. It's that last scene in 8 Mile, right? Like where I forget the guy's name, the other guy that he was battling with, where Eminem first just told him everything that's negative about himself, and now the guy that he was battling couldn't say anything to him because all of it's already out there. So I couldn't agree with you more. When we're doing long form content like this, you can't hide.
No.
And if clients and whatever you're trying to accomplish in your business are coming to you after that, you probably got some leverage now, right? From a brand perspective. In London, Ontario, what are you seeing from an investor's perspective? Because I know you deal with a lot of buyers, people who are moving into their first home and downsizing and upsizing, what we kind of call around here smart sizing. With a lot of people selling properties, residential and commercial. You handle all that. But I know a good portion of your business is dealing with investors, and so is mine. So I know there's a lot of viewers and listeners thinking like, hey, like, what's London, Ontario all about? I've never heard of London.
So I'll give you guys a high-level view. From our brokerage perspective, so we do have a residential division, a commercial division, and an investment division. All three of those will interchange depending on the markets in terms of volume, right? I'd almost say 33, 33, 33.
Okay.
The interesting thing about London is it's a very captive market because it's very, very dense.
Yep.
We call it focused diversification. So everything we do trickles into the other things. Like right before I was with you, I was up the street meeting with one of my builders and developers talking about some very high-end luxury residential homes that we sell, but they also have the capacity to do investment properties and townhomes, for example. And the conversation led to the fact that townhome investments in London are taking off.
In what sense? So is it like pre-construction?
Pre-construction and existing townhomes townhomes and condos weren't something people bought in London, right? For a long time, You buy a 2,000 square foot residential single family detached for 350 grand.
Yeah.
So most people, even as a first time home buyer, you get into the market at 250. Very easy for you to just go in and say, oh, I'm going to buy a house. Oh, I'm going to buy a house. Well, now the average price point's $430,000.
Okay.
A lot of people getting into the market, their entry level home is going to be a townhouse or a condo, which is normal. You guys saw that, 5 or 10 years ago, and London is about 5 or 10 years behind in terms of market demand for those product types. So from an investment perspective, what's happening is those single family homes that would previously be the ones that you would invest in are now getting bought up, renovated, and they're people's actual homes.
Okay.
The areas that were considered, C, D class neighborhoods are now going through that time period where somebody's saying, well, I can buy that house for 150 grand, put 50 in it, and make it worth 100 more.
Right.
That's starting to happen. So like Old East Village, for example, if you're investing in London, here's a piece of tactile information. Old East Village used to be known as EOA. Great neighborhood, some amazing people doing some amazing things. It was a really hot neighborhood for the last 5 or 6 years, right? Kind of priced people out in terms of cash flow and investments. Hamilton Road is another pocket. That's where EOA was 10 years ago, where people don't want to invest just because the price point and just the type of tenants and things that you're dealing with. Well, now, literally over the last 60 days, so this is super pertinent, I have been watching our team involved in a lot of single family home transactions that have pushed the price point from 250s to 325 in 60 days. Those stats have not hit MLS yet. Like, you guys are getting the goods where the public doesn't even know this yet.
Right.
That all of a sudden, Hamilton Road backing onto Vauxhall Park, that whole segment is trading for 3.25. So from an investor's perspective, they're going to look at all those houses and say, oh man, that's an area where you can do granny suites, you can duplex these houses, beautiful big lots. You can get in there and make things happen. Then after that, the larger investors are going to come in and start doing infill. They're going to say, oh, I can build a 4-plex, a 6-plex. And because the rental rate in London, vacancy rate's super low.
Right.
And that market's tight.
Talk to me about the vacancy rates and who are, well, let's start off with what is it? So what's the vacancy rate? What are you looking at around?
CMHC would say it's 2.9%.
Okay.
The areas we invest in, you're typically like sub 1.5.
That's pretty good. Like, that's really good. In
Really
Toronto,
good.
we're at like 1, a little under 1. So that's very strong. Who are the tenants?
It's a mixed bag, right?
Okay.
Depending on the map, and we have heat maps that we send to our clients that show you the tenant profiles in different areas.
That's cool.
So let's start at the
Send me a copy of it. I want to take a look at it, and
Anytime.
I'll make sure that we get it out to people.
So if you look at the core area, downtown London, very dense city, you're looking at like Woodfield and Old North downtown. That is a complete mix. You'll have young professionals, you'll have people that are going to school, you'll have people that work at brokerages that live in the area.
Okay.
It's a mix. I'd probably say 33 to 45% rental properties in that area.
Okay.
You move north near Western, you're going to get more students. You move east towards Fanshawe, you'll get more students, but that student rental market's probably only 27, 30% of the entire rental market.
Okay.
The rest is a mixture between professionals, which could be if you're near the hospitals, nurses, and people in the health professions, to people that are working in the finance industry or people that are working downtown, transitioning into home ownership. So they work there, or they rent a place for 3 to 5 years, save money for a house, move out, buy a house, somebody else takes their spot.
Okay.
So it really depends. And then depending on the areas, if you start going to like Hamilton Road, Blackfriars, you will find longer term tenants that have no interest in home ownership, which is interesting because it's always been home ownership. But we also know now young kids don't want their driver's license, don't want to drive cars. They just want to Uber everywhere. They don't want to own a home. They want to take their money and risk it starting a business. So it's a mixed bag.
Now you guys know why I would never talk about London, Ontario, because you just heard what he had to say. He knows it all, so get in touch with him. From an investment perspective, are we seeing rental income cover expenses?
We are, with an asterisk.
Okay.
Like anybody else looking for investments, a lot of times you call us and you say, I want cash flow and I want cash flow.
Let's talk about that a little bit. I want to elaborate a little bit because we got some time here, Justin. I really want to talk about when you get that call. I want to see $1,000 a month cash flow, and if I don't see $1,000 a month, it's not a good property.
Yeah.
I don't want to invest. How do you walk somebody through that?
It's pretty simple.
Okay.
I mean, the first thing I do is I sit down and I say, what are you actually trying to accomplish, right? And most of the times they're saying, I want to accomplish wealth. I want to, establish long-term wealth building so that I don't have to work anymore. And I'm like, okay, well, if you think you're going to buy, 4 cash flowing properties and quit your job and make $4,000 a month, it's not going to happen.
Not going to happen.
I'm not going to advise you to do it, especially in a hot market. It may work if you go to like out east in Newfoundland, and I know there's some markets where there is some good cash flows.
But then you get different types of tenants in those areas, and you don't see the passive appreciation.
1,000%, and you're bang on. I mean, Jazzy Fizzle, you're the man when it comes to long term.
Right, buy and hold,
and understand, like convincing people not to sell their properties and
begging people not to sell, man.
I mean, you want to work with a real estate agent that doesn't want a transaction. You want to work with somebody that actually cares about you and doesn't care about the file. I've talked myself out of hundreds of deals that have turned into more because that trust is there. But going back to what I was saying, so if you want maximum cash flow, you're going to get maximum problems, right? If you get...
What do you mean by that? Explain that.
I've been pitched properties. There was one 20 unit that basically said, it's $750,000, cash flow is a couple grand a month. It's amazing. I walked through it, disaster of a property. I mean, your vacancy rate's probably 35% because non-payment, right? You're dealing with tenants that aren't going to be able to pay you in the long run. You're going to be up on the phone all night. Your property manager is going to quit. Not worth the headaches. I've sold properties that were negative cash flow, that were opportunities to my people to flip units, get rents up. They made $200,000 on those, right? So, what you're looking at when you're just running numbers on the MLS doesn't really mean a whole lot. Chances are the information's not accurate. It's potential rents, which means even less than what I just said. But the people that you're working with, like this guy or our team, will be able to tell you where that property is going to go, because it doesn't matter where it is today. It doesn't matter what the cap rate is right now. It matters the risk that you're taking buying it, what the upside is, and are you protected from a cash flow perspective if the market tanks.
Right.
And that's where we do sell properties that are cash flow positive. Or break even, so that if the market were to crash, you can still carry that property without taking money out of your wallet, right?
That's why I don't think it's a big deal when properties come to my desk that are breaking even. It really excites me because as long as I'm not putting anything in out of my pocket, I'm getting the other massive ways of winning in real estate, which is the passive appreciation and the mortgage pay down. And I love the mortgage pay down aspect of it because it's black and white. There's no forecasting and or speculating around it. It's an amortization schedule. Anyone can Google it and figure out how much of my principal is going to be paid down. I just can't, if I could get people to understand that it's not all about cash flow. And I know you feel the same way. It's about creating wealth long term.
I think the problem, and I'm sorry to cut you off, but
not at all.
The problem we're dealing with right now is there's a lot of people in the game that have learn this very quickly, and it's very popular to become insta famous or jump on YouTube and talk about this stuff like it. I see people running seminars that people go to, and it's great for networking. It's always good to be involved in that kind of stuff. But who are you actually taking advice from? Are you taking advice from people that have seen it done before, long tail, or is it just the people that are trying to fake it till they make it and then re-up that to some other income stream or sell you a course when they haven't actually done it themselves, right?
I love my barber. He gives me some crazy fades. You can't see it today, but he gives me some wicked haircuts. But I'm not gonna allow him to talk to me about my real estate, right? Or I'm not gonna allow him to talk to me about my physical health because he's not necessarily the healthiest person, right? It's you hear it all the time. My Uncle Joe bought a property in 1972 and he lost money in real estate. Yeah, but he did it on his own, or he didn't have the education, right? So getting the education. Where do you advise people to get started? How? Is it sitting down with us? Is there something else that you say?
You know what? You can go out there and you can source information.
Right.
Just, like I said, my narrative that I'm trying to tell people is, do your own research and actually talk to people before you start signing checks and writing stuff. We've all heard the Bernie Madoff schemes that are out there, and we've seen the shills out there pitching stuff, and the market's really good right now. The market's not always going to be good. So, talk to people that are going to talk to you honestly, like Jas saying, buy and hold, buy and flip and refinance and leverage other people's money. There are strategies that you can use if you know the complexities of them, but be aware of the markets you're going into. Talk to people who have done it and learn from their mistakes. I mean, that's kind of the first entry level. Don't get stuck in your level of expectation too. If you heard somebody say, I need $1,000 a month cash flow, I need the 1% rule, these are things that you'll hear when you start getting into real estate investing. Don't anchor yourself to that. I mean, we're doing a deal right now on a sixplex, that's a dynamite deal. We'll refi and probably make them $250,000. And the initial analysis we looked at it was from another course.
Okay.
And I'm like, that's great. Like the stats and everything they're using is super comprehensive. That does not apply to this property because
got it
from the appraisal value that we got off market. So I knew that there was a transaction 2 doors down of another property that had just appraised and sold that would lift this value $250,000. That's not information that you can just get from CMHC. It's not information that you can just go and source. But you know, we have checks and balances in place to say, here's how this all looks. We'll do the deal. If we see something we don't like, we'll be just as quick to kill it as we are to sell it. So I think that's another indicator when you're talking to somebody about, well, what if something goes wrong? If they don't have an answer for you, your radar should definitely go up. And don't be afraid to reach out personally to people like Jas and myself, even if you're working with other people. I mean, amount of time I've given advice to people working with other agents, I'm happy to do it because I know it's going to get reciprocated down the line, right?
I tell people all the time, clients, if you're looking at a deal in Timbuktu, Saskatchewan, which I don't even know if it exists in Saskatchewan or not, but I just kind of pick on Saskatchewan in that sense, and I say, you need another set of eyes on a deal, just send it over to us. And it's like getting that second opinion from a doctor. I want to shift gears a little bit, Justin, because what I've seen kind of really neat with you, my man, is when I first originally met you, it was just you and Shannon. And now your team is growing, and not only the guys here, but there's guys back at your headquarters. Give us some tips to the listeners and viewers who are just starting out in entrepreneurship, starting out in business. How has that process been of growing a team?
You know what's funny? It goes back to what I just said about from an investing perspective of not being set in your ways. So I take my own medicine, and what I thought we were going to be now, like every year I sit down and I map out what I want to accomplish. And I go back and I look every December, right? Around Christmas time, everybody takes downtime, goal setting and all that stuff. And it's funny to look at that list and see what I thought we were going to be and then see what we're becoming. Couldn't be more different. You know, setting a long-term goal of serving people and really trying to work in our highest capacity was always our goal, right? Like our founding principles, you know, do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit, rather than humility, value others above yourself. And that is literally every single...
I want you to say that again, just because I want to make sure everybody caught it.
So do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit, rather in humility, value others above yourself.
Love it.
So every single real estate transaction, we ask ourselves, is this in the best interest of the client? Because that's our fiduciary duty. It can be easy in this business because things move so fast to just deal with things left, right, and center. But that's our founding principle. And it's gone back to finding our company and saying, okay, we can grow really fast and we can hire agents. We had 12 our first year that wanted to join us.
Right.
And I said to Shannon, we're not ready. We're not in a place where, A, we can hire them, we have enough business to feed them, or even have systems in place to give them what we promised we're going to give them. We grew slowly. We had a couple people out of the gates, so we didn't grow faster than we were able to, you know, offer service to those people. We built systems and processes with our people. There's a great book. I actually have it for you as a gift. I'm going to send it to you after when we're done here. So Jas just won. We do a monthly draw on our Instagram for engaged followers. So go to Prime Real Estate Can and follow us and engage, and you'll be up to win.
Really more for the content. And this guy's content, daily tips and advice are second to none.
And if you don't follow me, I'll put ads in front of you and you'll have to look at me anyways.
You have no choice then.
But it really talks about how work is changing, right? Like you look at the people that are here. I look at Gio, I look at Vic, I look at people that work for me, and they're probably not going to work for me forever.
Right.
I know they're coming to me for a period of time. They're going to learn, develop skills. Back in the day, you'd go work at a factory and work there for 40 years. That day is long gone. Like the amount of time people stay in one place is very, very short. So Shannon and I said, well, let's build a company around that and not try and hold on to people forever and make them feel like we're trapping them, right? So like, you know, revenue sharing setups where they only get paid out after X amount of years. And there's 1,000 different ways that people do this in companies now. We decided to shift it to say, okay, while you're with us, how can we provide you with systems and processes and resources you wouldn't be able to have on your own to get you to the next level? Because Gary was actually just talking about this, how from an entrepreneurship perspective, if you're building something, the typical question you get asked is, you know, what's going to happen if you're gone, right? A meteor falls on you and you don't exist anymore. What happens to your company? His answer was the best thing I've ever heard.
I love this one.
He said, Doesn't matter. I don't exist anymore. The whole company folds.
I'm actually pissed off that I'm dead.
Yeah.
Right?
Which is hilarious, right? Because typically from a business perspective, you ask a CEO of a company that, he'll be like, well, we've got this golden parachute system and this person takes my job and everything else.
So true.
His opinion was even more valid. And he said, you know what? Vic now has a skill set and a network of people that he knows because of me. He's going to be just fine.
Yeah.
And he knows how to do business authentically. He will be able to start from ground up, and he might start prime real estate 2.0.
So true.
And blow it up bigger than I did, right?
Yeah.
And if you can come at entrepreneurship from that mindset of collaboration and genuine intent and serving others above your own interests, I promise you it'll come back tenfold. It's happened over and over in our business to a point where I know I'm not in control. I just say I'm a steward for the big man upstairs in our business, and I feel like anytime I make a decision that's...
You're not talking upstairs, the landlord.
I'm talking about... I'm a man of faith, so I believe he's up there. He's doing his thing. Yes. And it's a funny thing where anytime I get offered a situation that's difficult, like the one we spoke about this morning, right?
Yep.
I do what I feel is the right decision for other people. I don't leave things with a sour taste in anybody's mouth. I respect people. I love on them. And I always feel like he may shut one door and then open up another I didn't even know I was supposed to walk through.
Yeah, I know.
And that's the journey, right? That's the legacy.
As leaders in our organization, we need to be prepared for that.
Yep.
And I like what you said at the start is that you think about these guys all the time and gals all the time, as I do as well, because I'm always trying to reverse engineer whatever they need. Do you see that in your team when they're so much more happier? They just work more and they do better work?
Without a doubt, I think, part of our roles as an organizational leader, is it's tenfold, right? Because we wear two hats. We run the company, we run the sales team, and client facing, and we deal with our clients hands on. I had a conversation actually on the way here about that, and they asked me candidly, how do you make your clients not feel like they're shuffled off? And I'm like, well, they're not shuffled off because everything still runs through us, and they still get our FaceTime, and we're always there for them. They're not used to that because the industry standard is you get shuffled off, right? You get sent to another agent, and then you never hear from the head agent anymore. I think we're changing the industry and how we actually operate, because I had a guy, actually, it's funny, I heard about this. We were looking for an investment property. One of my agents showed him the property. He happens to know my father-in-law. My father-in-law called me. He's like, hey, you might want to call this guy. He thinks you just shuffled him off. So I called the guy, and he was a landscaping company. I'm like, hey, buddy. I'm like, when you do a landscaping job for me, do you show up in the backhoe? And he's like, no. I'm like, exactly. I'm like, there's a reason we have people working for us in leverage so that we can smash the best deals for him. Like, oh, by the way, we dug this up off market for you while we were doing that conversation. So that's one hat. The second hat, going to what you were saying, is putting out fires in communication and being there for your team is the most important, highest level capacity you can have as an organizational leader. Gio is a good example of that, right? Came to us through Fanshawe, worked together, and I love his editing style. He's a good guy. I know he has ambitions, and I know where he's going. So I'm doing everything I can in a short period of time to see how I can help him level up. But he also said the exact same thing to me. He said, from an editing perspective, not necessarily what I want to be doing long tail. So we brought another guy into our organization that it's going to take a little bit of time to train him in the capacity that he wants to learn in, but he's at the point where he's willing to put in work and be a D-Rock and help Gio focus on the things he wants to focus on. I can see that being an easy layup and transition. And it's not, you have to take a step back from an ego perspective and say, this is what I envisioned it being. Yeah. Say, this is what it actually is. And going back to what I was saying, putting them first, saying, how can I serve you? And just having an open relationship with your employees that they can tell you that. Yeah. Right.
And that, it's an old saying, right? The open door policy. In fact, I know that what you do, because I'm trying to do the same thing. I mean, you're so ahead of me in that sense, where you set up times that you sit down with your guys and you make sure that they understand that they need to come to you with some issues that they're facing from a business perspective or a personal perspective. So you've taken it to the next degree and said, look, I'm actually setting time in my schedule and being proactive to make sure that we sit down together. Right?
Yeah, and to speak on that, I mean, that came from, again, a podcast that I was listening to talking about the fact that, spending one-on-one time with your employees is super important, but then, letting them know over time that you genuinely mean what you say and you say what you mean from the standpoint of, you own this company with me, like we're in this together. If you have a problem with how I run something, you can tell me, and I'm not going to blow up on you and just fire you, because we don't live 30 years ago where that would actually happen. Yeah. We live in a world where we can fix it. He knows how to do stuff better than I do.
We live in a world that we can fix it. It's so true, right? Like,
1,000%.
We think there's always problems and we can't get fixed. Yeah, you gotta fix it. You'll figure it out.
First world problems, right? Like, I was at a meeting with a big developer this morning talking about what we're doing. First quarter was great. We got their sales up. Things are tracking. There's challenges like anything else.
Sure.
And I looked at her and I said, if there weren't challenges, it wouldn't actually be fun.
Yeah. My partner's to me that anytime we get like really stressed out about something or worried, he's like, guys, like, what are we all worried about? We just help people buy, sell, and invest. We're not saving lives here by any means, right? Yeah.
And even to that point, like, one tactile piece of advice for you real estate agents, because I know you're all trying to learn from the man, would be anytime you do something that's very difficult, or you save a deal, or you do something that adds value that the public's never going to hear about, right? You're Batman, right? Girl or guy, whatever you're doing out there, take a second, write that down as a case study. Use that in your marketing. I've done that over the years in Instagram. I've repurposed it into somewhat of a novel that I have that on the back end. If I ever want to release it, I can.
That's so cool.
But showcases creating CPR on deals that anybody else would have let die. Literally doing deals for clients and doing things for them that would shock the public without them even really knowing about it, but knowing it was in the best interest of that client and their family because they were in a tough spot. Like, I know you guys all do it. The agents that I know, some of the most amazing people, and that's why I love the industry that I'm in now. But time goes by so quickly and you're so busy doing business, take time to document. Yeah. And that's what I guess the summation of this conversation would be is, I think that's where you've done a great job, is you're going into documenting a lot of different industries, a lot of different people, how they're getting to where they're going. And if you notice a narrative in all your videos, there's no exact formula, because if I take your exact formula, it might not work with my personality. But I know that you're there for me as a brother. And if I get stuck somewhere and my ego's too big to reach out to a friend, I might crash and burn and lose it all.
Yeah.
But if you reach out to the community that you've built around you and it's done with genuine intent, that community will be there for you. And I like where things are going, despite how negative people are about social media and that whole narrative.
Yeah.
I think we're going to see more transparency. I think the fakers are going to get found out. I think Instagram's going to remove likes and all that stuff.
Well, they've done that already, right?
The genuine content is really going to shine.
Right.
So the people that have been doing it long tail, knowing this is a 5-10 year game, are going to just surge right past the people that are buying followers and faking it till they make it.
I'm so glad I never even like got into it. First of all, I didn't even know how to do it, like how to buy followers and stuff. I'm sure like obviously you can Google it and stuff, but I just was never into that. And if it wasn't for Tyler, who showed me one day how to see how many subscribers you have on YouTube, I wouldn't even know, because it was never, and it's till this day, it's never about that. It's all about somebody watching this video, listening to this podcast as they take their dog for a walk on the treadmill, drive, whatever it is, and say, shoot, that guy Justin, there's something about him. I'm going to go check him out. Yeah. And then 6 months from now to a year from now, they're listening to your content, watching your content, and they learn something that inspires them to take any type of action, whatever it may be, right? And so I know you're the same in that sense, Justin, where it was never about the followers, never about the likes. It was just about, let's put out content and see where it goes.
My favorite thing to do is troll bots. So the bots that hop on my Instagram, you'll always see me chirping them. And you know what? They can't even read it because they post on a million accounts. But and I do it for the audience, right? Like I do it when somebody posts and says, "Hey, great post. You should like me for more followers or join my page." And I'll chirp them back and say, "Buy a house with me," and I'll go buy followers with you, which I would never do. But it's really, it's the premise of not caring, and it's the hardest thing to do, right? Because we all want to feel acknowledged. It's ever since we're little babies and we go to kindergarten or we go to high school. I struggled with that, like on a personal level. I don't even think I've ever shared this on any of my platforms, but I always wanted to fit in. I was friends with everybody. I never tried to shut groups down. I got bullied when I was really, really young. Things happened, right?
Sure.
Like anything else. But it wasn't until, I was in my mid to late 20s that I really found who I was.
A couple of years ago.
A couple of years ago. Easy, Tiger. You got the gray hair. Is actually, anyways, I'm not going to say my age, but.
I got one of you coming too. Don't worry.
Hey, this guy, Babyface McGee over here. I think he's 19. Coming back to like my journey in faith.
Yeah.
Like, you know, when I found God from my own perspective, and whatever path you go down is yours, but from my own perspective, I realized I had that acknowledgement. It was always there. I didn't need it from other people. And when I stopped caring what other people thought of me, my actual personality started coming out. And then I started being able to serve other people in my highest capacity versus thinking I had to please the world. And that's what's been the biggest delineation for me, for the people I attract myself to, is not people that are trying to gamify the system, learn the algorithm, hack the system just to make money. I look at people like yourself. I look at everybody in the industry syndicate. I look at guys like Ryan. I look at people that we've have in our circles that are just genuinely good people, regardless of if the cameras are on or off. If they're acting the same way that they would when the cameras are on and they're doing the polished photos as they would if we were just grabbing coffee, those are the people that I want in my tribe. And I think those are the people that the world's going to see very soon.
I love that about you and I, right? Because we knew each other before we started doing this camera stuff and podcasts and things like that. And I've seen no change in you. Like, you're the same guy. The first phone call that we got on, I still remember that call where I was trying to get you to come on board onto an investor group, and you're like, "What the heck is this group you're talking about?"
Bernie Madoff. Yeah, that's what I thought it was
exactly
to start with,
what you thought it was. And I was like, "Justin, dude, I've seen a couple of videos. I think you did one or two at that time or something." I was like, "You're gonna love it. You just gotta come show up." And so I'm so glad you did.
I was blown away, to speak to that really quickly.
Yes.
You know, that's again how I think you should approach things. Have some skepticism.
Right.
I'm skeptical, right?
Yeah.
You may be skeptical about things I'm saying, which is a good sign. When I went to that first event with you,
we're talking about our friends Michael Saraceni and Scott McGilvery from Keyspire. That was the group that you were going to.
It was,
and I was telling you to get involved with, and you obviously have. So continue.
And then they're family now. Like, we've built out a branch of our division for those guys. But the skepticism that I had was based off of seeing other investor groups that I had been to. I went to theirs, and I was floored. I'm like, oh, there's levels to this game, because the guys that were there didn't need to be there. They were just the top guys in their market, and they were crushing it. And I saw how Michael and Scott were true entrepreneurs, adapted to the market, and there's a reason they're the top investment firm in North America right now.
Hands down.
And they keep changing. I mean, I talk to Michael, and I keep close tabs with them.
Yeah.
And they show me what they're doing on the back end, and I couldn't be a bigger advocate for them in terms of where they're going, right? So I appreciate you kind of forging that relationship, but again, it just goes back to intent. Like, it wasn't like you wanted anything from me. It was just... We were the same guy, and it was why I hooked you up with Dustin in the industry syndicate.
Sure.
I'm like, I didn't even have to think about it. I just flipped you the number. I'm like, call this guy, and look where it's gone now. Right?
Hands down, it was the syndicate to me is so cool. I always say it's the dream team of podcasters, and I love the fact that some of my viewers might get tired of me now and just be like, "Jas, we hate your voice, we hate how you look, yada yada yada," but they might just cling on to you or to Dustin or to, Chelsea.
I listened to Chelsea the entire other way here.
Did you?
There was like 4 episodes that I had on save, and it just popped up.
Yeah.
And it's Chelsea. I mean, I've known Chelsea for probably 3 or 4 years now.
Okay.
And it's a funny thing how, you can just get busy, but, having systems in place so that you can see the faces that you want to see on a regular basis, subscribing to people on YouTube, liking and commenting on their stuff. That's one thing I will leave you guys with, another tactile piece is, as much as you're consuming content, think in the back of your mind that the algorithms are going to be skewed to what you're engaging with. So if you want to see more of something, give them feedback.
Yeah.
That's the one thing people don't do enough of, right?
So true.
And I actually go out of my way. I think I reviewed one of your podcasts this morning. It popped up on my iTunes.
Okay.
And I'm on your YouTube. I'm always engaging, but I'm like, I don't think I've done it on Apple. Jas has given me so much good content. I'm going to give him a 5-star review because I know it's going to move the needle from an Apple perspective.
I appreciate that. My problem is I don't know how to get that. I don't know how to receive that review, so I'm gonna get my team figuring that out.
But I think on the back end, for the viewers watching, like, the more you do that, the more it's going to curate that information for you, and the more you'll be surprised by the suggestions. Like, there were 3 industry syndicate podcasts.
Yeah,
I didn't even know were podcasts now. They came up as suggestions. Subscribe. I might not listen to them today,
right?
But they'll probably get a review from me in the next 30 days. So I think, if anybody's looking to grow their social or be more engaged, you got to put 2 cents in the well for every 1 you take out. So every picture you post on Instagram, you better be liking and commenting. You're engaging with somebody on a direct message or an actual feedback rather than smiley face, fist pump, fire. You should literally be just having a conversation. LinkedIn's a great strategy too, where Jamie Dodds and I were talking from the commercial perspective. One of the biggest things on LinkedIn that moves the needle, jump in the conversation, say something that you actually mean.
Right.
And I guarantee you it'll move the needle for your business.
And if you're just doing it for like bullshit reasons, man, don't even do it, right? Like really
honestly,
with the right intent. And if it's the long-term mindset, if you have that, come with some goods. Like there has to be some real comments that you're putting, not just bullshit, right?
If you're copying and pasting, lose my number. Like honestly, like nothing will turn somebody off. I've unfriended a ton of people on LinkedIn that do that to me because I know you don't care about me. I know there's no genuine engagement there.
Right.
But if I post something and I get a genuine engagement on it or a conversation, that moves the needle. And I think for you guys, an easy thing to do, use audio. Everything's going to audio. Search, Gary said that 65% of search right now is being done with audio.
Yeah.
Get used to it so that you're a market leader when it comes to it. But if I see Jas's post and he talks about a new sale they just did, I may just hit the audio button as I'm walking to get a coffee. Say, Jas, super happy for you guys. No surprise there. Your team is top notch. Congrats, man. Period. Send. Yeah. That's how much effort it takes. Yeah. But we're so used to not even trying or double tapping. How many likes did I get? Yes. Okay, on with my day.
Exactly.
That little engagement will bring you more in the long run than 1,000 double taps all day long.
We've mentioned a name a few times already, Mr. Gary Vee. Yeah. I'm obviously a huge follower of his. Love what he did. He's played a very big role in everything that we see here. How did you come across him? Why do you continuing to consume his content? And I think out of that, people who are watching and listening who are not following him are seeing him. Hopefully they will, because I think that the guys, I truly believe, and I'm going on record saying it, that he is our Bill Gates, Warren Buffett, Jeff Bezos of our generation. But tell me how you came across him and why you continue following him.
So the way I came across him was YouTube. So it was a Remax keynote speech. I want to say 2012 or 2011. Yeah. He was speaking to a room of real estate agents. I was in the real estate industry. I was consuming as much content as I could and stumbled across it. And the one thing I'll suggest to anybody that's looking up his name as we're talking, what you think he is not what he is, right? The surface level of verbose, like, very forward, dropping F-bombs every 2 seconds. It turns a lot of people off because they think this guy is just, a social media guru that, just prances around on stage, is high on himself. If you dig into his content, he's one of the most real, authentic, loving people you'll ever meet. I had an interaction at the Chamber of Commerce last week. We had or 2 weeks ago at an event, and a guy came up to me, and we know each other just through business, and he knows who we are through social. And he's like, yeah, things are great, right? Yeah, Gary Vee, you're on the hustle, right? Yeah. And I just said to him, I'm like, no. I'm like, we're doing our thing. I'm like, life is good.
Shout out to our boy Simeon.
Simos, what's up, buddy?
He has the Raptors jersey, their game one, and shout out to our boy.
I'm surprised he's not walking around with a basketball rim with a ball just bouncing 4 times into it.
It's best, right? It's going good.
Awesome. Family, right? But going back to what I was saying, right? He, it's one of those things where people look at him and they just make this assumption that he's like all these other guys I'm talking about, just prancing around on stage, just with a shtick. He's an actual operator. He actually hates the term social media guru.
Or motivator.
And a lot of people, like going back to what I was saying about the Chamber of Commerce, the guy said to me, oh, you're on the hustle, you're on the grind, on the Gary Vee. And I just said to him, I'm like, no, like life is good. We got a great team. We have amazing people doing amazing things. And I said, I'm excited for where technology and the market's going and to tackle that. But I think what people get wrong is they think, well, he just says you got to work all the time, no breaks, no sleeps. And he says, do what's right for you, right? Do what makes you happy. Like if you're happy making 60 grand a year, playing golf 4 times a week, then just do that, right? Yeah. Don't worry about keeping up with the Joneses and everything else. And, the thing in his Remax talk that anchored me and has made him literally, he's like a brother to me from the standpoint that I consume his content regularly is he saw where the market was going before it went a long time ago, right? He wrote a book called Crush It and the Thank You Economy. And the Thank You Economy was my anchor, where he said, for the longest time, we grew up in a time where big box retailers would use smells, sounds, and ads to get you to buy their products. Yeah. We all know it, right?
Yep. New car smell.
But in our grandpa's day, they knew their cobbler, they knew their butcher, they knew their photographer. Like, they had an intimate relationship with them. So we've gone from that time to the big box stores. Big box stores are crumbling. transparency is coming through. We're going back to the thank you economy where you're only going to use me because you know somebody who happens to know me and I'm actually vetted. I can say whatever I want online, but unless you have a track record or something you can bank on.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what got my attention. And then I saw how every time there was a big social shift online, whether like even right now, right, that he says, watch what he does, not what he says.
Yeah.
Twitter. He's driving everybody to his Twitter.
So true.
Right? Twitter fell off for like 4 years.
Yeah.
It's coming back as the water cooler and conversation piece. You know, Jack Dorsey, the guy that owns Twitter, did a podcast round circuit talking to everybody about how they're doing things on the back end.
Yeah.
They're gaining ground. So if you're not on that platform and you're putting all your eggs into Instagram and Instagram folds, you're got nothing, right? You're not an operator. You don't understand how it goes. And what he's talking about now that's coming in 3 or 4 years with the voice stuff is true. Like there's a reason we have an Alexa flash briefing for our podcast, and it's based in large part on how I see that he's in it and he only talks about stuff that he knows.
Yeah, stays in his lane, right?
You just can't make assumptions about people. You can't make assumptions about Jas, me, or Gary Vee.
Yeah.
You have to be able to step back and see what they're saying from a macro perspective, not what the media is telling you and not what those sound bites make you feel about the person, right?
You said living the life. I have to ask, how are you balancing not only work-life balance, and maybe it's the lack thereof, because I'm honest to my viewers and my listeners that I have no balance in that sense. I go all in on this. I see my kids and my wife, essentially on vacation, and on Sundays I take Sundays off. So there's not a real true balance. With you, it's very interesting because you work with Shannon.
Yeah.
How do you balance that? Or not?
I don't balance it. Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing, right? I think that the work-life balance thing's a myth.
Okay.
I think anybody telling you that you're going to have this perfect balance doesn't exist. I look at it as 5 cups on a table, right? You got this much water, and you have 5 cups, right? Yeah. You can only put so much water in each cup before you don't have any water left. So you've got your family cup, you've got your parenting cup, you've got your work cup, you've got your personal cup, whatever you have in your life. Yeah. Faith, whatever it's going to be, right? Yeah. I can spend a month in prayer on a retreat and be in a great place and fill that cup up, and then all my business is gone and my wife hates me because she's been dealing with the little one by herself and we have no relationship, like spousal, or my cup, like my relationship with Shannon is a cup. So I'm very cognizant of having a conversation with them sometimes and over communicating what expectations are. Like the last 2 days, I've worked from like pretty much 6 a.m. until 11:30 p.m. both days, just because like we're farmers, right? You plant seeds, the crops got to come in, you do what you got to do. I told Shannon, hey, my call's forwarded to the office right now. Team's taking care of everything. I'll talk to you when I'm done.
Right.
And she's fine with that to a certain degree.
Sure.
Right? Like she does own the brokerage with me and she runs the back end. She's amazing. She runs all the legal accounting. She runs the staff. Every deal we do, she's got to do 50 things, right? So I don't even see half of what she does.
Right.
But we do take time where, we will turn the phones off. We'll send it to the team. We've got systems in place to make sure nothing gets dropped, but that's where creating an abundance mindset with your team and not feeling like I got to keep every deal to myself enables you to have that leverage. Like we've got more capabilities than any single agent because of the fact that there's 11 of us. There's 11, there's 60 a year guys where if you're like, hey, you know what? I got to go out for a date with my wife for 8 hours. These 3 files are on the go. They got to get smashed. You have people that can do that for you, right? If you're by yourself, I'd be very, very scared of how you were going to manage that balance, right?
I wouldn't. It would be one of the toughest things for me to do now. I knock on wood. To do this by myself now, right? I love the fact that I have so many team members to not only help me, but to watch them grow and all the stuff we were talking about earlier. On the flip side, and I guess essentially the same thing when you're talking about the cups and Gary, so it's all kind of coming together about his hustle and talking about the grind. It's not all that he's about. I don't like the fact that when people are judging someone, and I guess it's coming to me now, which is you're working too hard, you're hustling too much. Where to me, like I just found out like last night, somebody mentioned to me that it was Victoria Day long weekend. And I swear to God, it pissed me off so much because I don't need the day off.
Yeah.
And now like it just came to me because it's usually later on in the month. I'm just kind of wired that way. And now I have to give everyone a day off. And I'm not all about like, you know, what do they call that? Like
just you're not driving them
exactly.
to
I'm
work
not driving.
to, like,
That's not what I am.
Yeah.
And we have a lot of fun. I give them a lot of time off. But it was more like, shit, now I'm going to be forced to take a day off.
Seems like a lot of days off.
You know what I'm saying?
It seems like there's random vacations now, like every 3 weeks.
To me, vacation, and in all honesty, and I'll probably get a bunch of comments and a bunch of feedback, and people are pissed off at what I'm about to say. Like, vacations actually give me more anxiety than anything else. So my wife is trying to plan a vacation sometime in August, and her just talking about it, something happens to my stomach. I'm like, shit, I got to be away from the office, and I can't work. Like. But that's me.
So I've got a tactile thing to give you. Yeah, 100%. Okay. I get it, right? Like anybody that's in this mindset, we all struggle with the same things because you go on vacation, like 6 hours in, you're like, oh, I got all these ideas. You're writing them down. You're like, I want to execute. I want to execute.
Yeah.
I time block, right? So what I'll do is like when we're on vacation, we went away for a couple weeks in March.
Right.
It was March. And 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. work, 9 p.m. to 10 p.m. work.
Okay.
So I had those 2 time blocks.
While
I told my
you were
clients
away.
while I was away.
I like that. Okay.
Yeah, to me,
see now I'm already starting to feel a little bit better because I'm allowed to work while I'm on vacation.
But
right?
and there were times where I didn't. Right. Like there was one night we had a really nice dinner, and I told Shannon. Like she asked me, she's like, you know, we're gonna go do this. I'm like, totally cool. I'm just gonna do this. Then is that cool with you? Over communicating with your spouse is something that's very important. I don't do enough of it. Like if she's watching this, it's easy for me to say it. Nobody's perfect, right? Like I'm not perfect. The team knows this as well too. Like, you know, you talked earlier about how they know your flaws. My team knows my flaws. Right. I'm self-deprecating. I'm fully aware of how my mind works. I said to Nathan yesterday, it's a circus in there, and I come up with 150 ideas every day. But
we're like walking contradictions. Our
80% that we do is ironclad, right? Sure. Like the numbers we put up on the board and how we operate is 80. My 20% can be the circus. Yeah. Because in that 20%, I'm going to find the next 80%. Yeah. So when the market shifts, we're going to be market leaders in how we do things. I've always thought that way. And it's kind of the same thing with Shannon where, you know, I really want to make an effort to let her know she is loved, over communicate the fact that, you know, my heart is with her and my daughter, especially now with the age my daughter's at, making sure I'm present, making sure my daughter knows I'm not on my phone. The time that I'm with her is attention that she gets. But then when I do have to go to work and she's like, Daddy, you're working really hard, I sit down and I try and explain it to her like an adult why I'm doing what I'm doing and what I'm going to do to balance it out. Like saying, like, Daddy's going to take Sunday off. Does that excite you? And she'd be like, yeah. And I'd be like, and whatever you want to do, we'll do, right? So awesome. It's the same thing when you go on vacation. Yeah. I'd say set up those time blocks. Chances are you'll only need one of them. Yeah. So 9 to 10, focus time, headphones on. You can get a full day's work done. I know you can.
You know what? I already, like I said, I feel better already. Yeah. And I'm not judging anybody who takes vacations. Like, to me, it doesn't even matter. Like, take half the year off. I don't really care. Yeah. To me, I just have I'm obsessed with growth personally for myself that I want to give it every single minute. Like Wednesday, today, it's my favorite day because I know the team is going to be around like for 12 hours. And so that really excites me because now I know we can work that much harder and we'll make it very, very fun. I want to end this off, my man, with what are you excited about?
I'm excited about the fact that we live in the best time ever. People have such a negative connotation to what we're seeing in the media, you know, political climate, social media, technology, how it's affecting our youth. You know, I think we've gone through a couple growing pains, which is normal in any type of technology revolution. But I think we're heading to a place where there's going to be a lot more transparency. We're going to realize we all have flaws, just like everybody else. Nobody's perfect. And I think it's going to be more of a community that we live in than we've had for a long time. Because I feel like when I was a kid, you knew your neighbors, you knew the flaws that your neighbors had. The beauty's in the wrinkles, right? Yeah. And I think for a long time, we got into this world where everything has to be perfectly positioned. And I worry too, right? I worry about, you know, the youth that I see with the perfect Instagram photos, kids that are like 13, you know, you see them walking in the street, taking photos and thinking that they have to live up to this standard. I think it's all going to get blown out very soon and very quickly. And I think we're going to go away from visual overwhelm to audio. And I think the cream's going to rise to the top. I'm also excited for a market collapse, If that helps anybody. Not something you think a real estate agent would say.
Yeah.
But a common question we get is, oh, the market's so great, things must be great. I'm like, yes and no, right?
Yeah.
Like when the market's really good, it's a lot more challenging for people to do business because you're doing more transactions to do the same number of deals, but
more people in the
market
business.
gets bloated, right? Like the podcasting world right now is so bloated. Everybody and their brother has a podcast.
Yeah, it's so true.
And you know, I'm trying to be different in how I do mine. I see you're trying to be different in how you do yours, and I really think, you know, when everything does collapse, as I said. And I don't mean collapse from the sense that we're all going to go to zero. I think there's some checks and balances in place where, you know, there's just going to be a correction.
Yeah.
I think there's going to be a correction across all industries: podcasts, real estate, finance, restaurant industries. It's coming. I can smell it in the air, and I'm excited because, as I said earlier, anything that's easy isn't really fun, right? The beauty's in the wrinkles, and the sense of attainment or feeling like you accomplished something comes when you do something difficult. So if you're out there and there's something you want to tackle, you know, it's something that you've been putting off because you think it's just unachievable, go for it. Because the market's now in a better place than it's ever been before. But don't be afraid to fail because it's never been easier to pick yourself up, reinvent yourself. And I guarantee you, if you look for it, there is a community of like-minded individuals that will gladly share the secrets to get to where you want to be.
Just got to find those people.
That's all it is. Start with Jas. He knows everybody.
Justin, where do people find you?
Probably the easiest way is Prime Real Estate Can, all one word, on Instagram. That's where we'll have all our back episodes of Prime Daily. I think, like I said, there's 477 some odd episodes. It's a good way to get to know us. Our YouTube channel is where I'm driving a lot of traffic right now. So Prime Real Estate Brokerage. If you can't find it on the interwebs, you can go off our Instagram account, or you can just find us in London. We're there anytime. If you have any interest in London or surrounding areas, we cover all those markets. Jas, I appreciate your time. You're a good dude, and I'm excited to do this again in the future.
For sure. We're going to do it in your new office. That's
actually in July. We'll shoot another podcast from our office, so stay tuned for that.
Awesome, 100%. Thanks a lot, Justin.
Yeah.
Guys, keep on listening. Take care.
See you guys.